Last episode we finally managed to reach Rivendell and ended with a scene where Frodo collapsed beyond the fort of Rivendell. The screen fades to white and we hear Elrond's voice. This completed the first book of the Fellowship of the Ring, which is divided into 2 books, same with The Two Towers and Return of the King. So 5 books are left. I want to say thank you for all the positive feedback and support so far. I will of course continue until we are through all of The Lord of the Rings. But as you can imagine, that will take a while, but look forward for content for years to come. I also want to hint towards my last video about who can see the unseen in Tolkien's world. I often claimed in this series that elves who have seen the 2 trees of Valinor can see the unseen. In that video I explain this in detail and provide the quotes and sources from the books for that interpretation. However, in this episode today, we will start to look into the chapter Many Meetings and how the film depicts it. As always, I try to pronounce names as Tolkien described it, or it makes sense. Spoiler warning and shoutouts to Kimberly 80, Laura Taunton, and Sarah Morello Art. The book chapters that play in Rivendell, which are Many Meetings, The Council of Elrond, and The Beginning of The Ring Goes South, are very exposition heavy. In it, we learn so much about the lore and current situation of Middle-earth. The film also uses this part to introduce the viewer into the bigger picture of the world, even though some of the book's exposition was moved a bit. For example, we already saw Gandalf being imprisoned by Saruman before. In the book, he tells the complete story during the Council of Elrond, while in the film we learn about his stay in Isengard in small pieces throughout the first half of the film, but not how he escaped, and it's a surprise to see Gandalf sitting at Frodo's bed when he awakes. We already covered the Isengard part in the episodes 12, 13 and 14 completely, so I won't go through it here again. In the Rivendell section of the extended edition of the film, we also learn much about the background story. Many new characters are introduced and it's explained what they did in the meantime. Some of those have deep lore implications, which we will discuss in later episodes, that will be most likely dedicated to one specific topic each. The Rivendell part is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult parts to cover for me in this series. Both film and book start the chapter Many Meetings identical. Frodo awakes in a bed in Rivendell, and Gandalf sits next to him. Well, in the book Gandalf sits at the window, which makes more sense. We come to that in a moment. Even the beginning of the dialogue is very similar. Frodo asks where he is, and Gandalf tells him in the house of Elrond, and the time and date. That is the same in the book too. If we move a bit back to the transition to the scene, the fade to white and then the slow fade out of it is an interesting stylistic device in film. We all know the fade to black. A fade to black portrays a definitive end, or in some cases that a passage in film has ended and some time has passed after it. A fade to white is by most viewers perceived as more open and enigmatic or mysterious. It can be used to portray death and a glimpse at the afterlife or an ascension to a higher plane of existence. We see this used later with Gandalf the Grey when he becomes Gandalf the White. It can also be used to fade to a dream scene. Here I think Peter Jackson wanted to play with expectations and let it open if Frodo survived or not. It's a quite interesting choice and demonstrates how viewers react differently to colors. When Frodo awakes, we see Gandalf in the room, as mentioned. I always found it strange that Gandalf smokes next to Frodo in the film, who is recovering from his wound and almost became a wraith. But as mentioned in the book, he sits at the window and smokes there, which makes more sense. I assume it has to do with the so-called blocking. The term comes from theater, and basically it's about how actors move and are placed in the available space during a scene, for example on stage. It's very important for scene composition. Of course, in film you can also move the camera, in contrast to theater, but it's still very important in movies, and it's also a true art in filmmaking. For example, the legendary director Akira Kurosawa was an absolute master when it comes to blocking, same as Orson Welles, Steven Spielberg and so on. This is, in my opinion, a great example why things work different in a book compared to film. If Gandalf would be sitting at the window like in the book, it could give the audience the impression of distance between the characters, and the scene could feel much colder, but I assume Peter Jackson wanted to make the scene feel very warm. It's touching when we see somebody who was very ill in hospital awakening from his treatment, and somebody else, a loved one, is sitting to his side waiting for him, caring. I think to portray this, moving Gandalf close to the bed makes absolutely sense, and in the commentary Ian McKellen explains that he insisted to smoke in this scene, same as in the book. Well, in the book Tolkien could express explicitly that Gandalf blew white smoke rings out of the window, and we got to think he does this to not disturb Frodo recovering with the smoke, and see that as caring too, without getting the feeling of distance. We see a little conflict between what the medium film demands and accuracy to the book, and I think this conflict never goes away in film adaptations. At least it seems Gandalf waited till Frodo awoke in the film. A similar case is the description of the ceiling in the room in the book compared to what we see in the film. Quote, "It was flat and it had dark beams richly carved." In this scene we see that in the film it looks quite different, but in a visual medium you again generate different impressions in the audience by choosing the space, forms, colors and contrasts of a room. For example, rooms in Rivendell are not separated from the outside world. No window glass is used, which makes it feel close to nature and in harmony to its environment. The set builders did an absolutely fantastic job of bringing Rivendell to life while fulfilling the needs of the film when it comes to scene composition, design, forms, shapes and color. It must have been a tremendous amount of work planning, designing and building it. Showing things in film is a powerful tool. There's the saying, show, don't tell. Probably first said by Anton Chekhov. I could be wrong here. I don't fully agree with it though, at least not as a general rule that has to be applied all the time, because that would limit art. A complex adaptation like The Lord of the Rings definitely can't do this all the time. However, Peter Jackson uses it a lot too. Next to Frodo's bed we see a lampstand with 8 arms. The 8 could be a reference to the Aratar, that is the group of the 8 greatest Valar, the high angels or powers of Arda. It's the only instance of 8 that comes to my mind, but maybe it's just accidental. The statue close to Frodo's head has wings like an angel, so I could imagine it depicts one of the Valar. In this case it's most likely Elbereth Gilthoniel, Queen of the Stars, or Este, the Valar of Healing, which would make sense too. It looks a bit like Galadriel though, but that would make less sense in my opinion. Somebody definitely put in some work creating those details in the background, and I would not be surprised if they would reference Tolkien's lore. If you have better interpretations or some knowledge, please let me know in the comments. In the book, the dialogue at the bed is much longer and has some interesting details. For example, Gandalf seems to know about Frodo's adventure at the Barrow Downs. Frodo wonders about that because his friends should have little memory about it themselves. But Gandalf explains that Frodo was talking in his sleep and, quote, "It has not been hard for me to read your mind and memory." So, could Gandalf read the mind of others? It seems so, and we see the ability of telepathic communication referenced in the films among the elves, for example, Galadriel too. At the end of the Lord of the Rings book, in ironically the chapter Many Partings, we find another interesting quote referencing how Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel and Celeborn conversed. For they did not move or speak with mouth, looking from mind to mind, and only their shining eyes stirred and kindled as their thoughts went to and fro. It seems they could communicate telepathically, and in many meetings Gandalf seems to be able to read Frodo's memories. This detail expands a lot on how Gandalf figured out Gollum's past, while Gollum was captured in Thranduil's realm. Gandalf proved that he is very good at puzzling information together just from a few word fragments he got. The ability to read a mind, to some extent, might explain this ability further. About the interrogation of Gollum, he said, it was difficult to learn anything from him for certain, for his talk was constantly interrupted by curses and threats. A few sentences later, I had weary days of it, but from hints dropped among the snarls I gathered that his padding feet had taken him at least to Esgaroth and even to the streets of Dale, listening secretly and peering. We can imagine how this conversation probably went and how difficult it must have been to piece Gollum's past together from that, but of course Gandalf could have looked a bit into his memories too. Frodo's mind was for sure much more in order, and the wizard knew him well, so that probably allowed Gandalf to get a very clear picture of Frodo's troubled journey from the Shire to Rivendell. I like, however, how Tolkien decently hints at Gandalf's ability at several occasions in the book, which are easily overlooked. After this section, Frodo expressed how much Strider helped them, but that they also needed Gandalf at their side, who answers to Frodo that he was delayed. This we also find as quote in the film, and it cuts to the scene at the top of Orthanc in Isengard, where Gandalf escapes with the help of the great eagle Gwaihir. In the book, Gandalf does not explain what exactly delayed him just yet and waited for the council to begin to tell his full story, as mentioned. He only said that he was held captive, followed by another interesting but at this time unusual statement, quote, "At the moment I will only say that I was held captive." "You?" cried Frodo. "Yes, I, Gandalf the Grey," said the wizard solemnly. "There are many powers in the world, for good or for evil. Some are greater than I am. Against some I have not yet been measured, but my time is coming. The Morgul Lord and his Black Riders have come forth. War is preparing." So what the film tells us about Gandalf's captivity goes a bit beyond what actually happens in the dialogue in the book, but it fits in my opinion. It's also not clear in the film if Gandalf tells this story to Frodo or just goes through it again in his memory, so only the viewer can learn what happened. It's of course clear that they can't cover every dialogue and information from the council itself in the film, and especially not in the same order. Following the statement that war is coming, Frodo is surprised Gandalf knew about the riders. The wizard responded, "Yes, I knew of them. Indeed, I spoke of them once to you, for the Black Riders are the Ring Race, the 9 servants of the Lord of the Rings. But I did not know that they had arisen again, or I should have fled with you at once. I heard news of them only after I left you in June, but that story must wait." It seems Gandalf was surprised by the activity of the Nazgul at that time and that they have left Mordor or Minas Morgul, else he would have taken Frodo with him directly. I think there lies a very interesting detail in this. I think the word surprise is too weak. Gandalf did not think that this would be possible at all, else he would have not bet on Frodo being safe in the Shire. If he would have suspected the slightest possibility of the Ringwraiths being on their way, he would have taken Frodo with him immediately. But why was he not expecting it? If we look into the chronology of the events, we learn in the chapter Strider that at the 1st of May, Strider and Gandalf met at Sarnford, which is close to the Shire and Bree, so he was nearby. Gandalf met Radagast on the Greenway in around the 21st of June and learned from him that the Nazgul are looking for the Shire. Gandalf explains in the council, "I stayed the night in Bree and decided that I had no time to return to the Shire. Never did I make a greater mistake." He planned to get the help of Saruman, the greatest of his order, and then return to get Frodo, who should be on his way already, but Butterbur forgot to deliver the letter, and Gandalf was imprisoned by Saruman. Gandalf also points out that it was maybe better how it went, I assume because else he would not have learned of Saruman's treachery. In the book, Frodo calls Butterbur stupid, but Gandalf defends his old friend Butterbur, showing that he is not angry at him for not delivering his letter and that he maybe just fulfilled what fate had planned to happen. We discussed this in earlier episodes. At the 20th of June, Gollum also escaped from Thranduil's realm, and of course, the Grey Wizard already knew that Gollum told Sauron about Baggins and Shire. So why was it so hard for Gandalf to imagine that the Nazgul are on their way to Frodo? Didn't he have all the clues he needed already? Of course, he knew that only few knew exactly where the Shire was, which made it safe for some time. We also talked about how Saruman lied to the Nazgul who visited him and that they found Grima on their way south, who told them the truth and the location of the Shire without Saruman knowing. Without this incident, they would probably have been even further delayed. I like how the greed of the evil powers for the One Ring resulted in a delay, like evil cancelling out each other. On top of the problem of finding the Shire, even Sauron was a bit, you could say, indecisive if it was a good idea to send the Nazgul, his most powerful servants, on this mission. Quote from the Unfinished Tales: "None could withstand them when gathered together under their terrible captain, the Lord of Morgul. Yet this weakness they had for Sauron's present purpose. So great was the terror that went with them, even invisible and unclad, that their coming forth might soon be perceived and their mission be guessed by the wise." It's explained further that they don't have an own will and are bound to Sauron, so they could be trusted receiving the One Ring and bringing it back to Sauron. In addition, he was lacking information because, quote, "Yet all his ordinary spies and emissaries could bring him no tidings, and this was due largely both to the vigilance of the Dún Edain and to the treachery of Saruman, whose own servants either waylaid or misled the servants of Sauron." As a result, Sauron planned to do several things at once. He attacked Thranduil's realm to recapture Gollum and get the information he was still missing, while preventing his enemies from maybe getting more information from him. He, in addition, attacked Gondor at Osgiliath to give the Nazgul a reason to be out in the open, but let the Nazgul in secret search Baggins and Shire. This should distract the wise enough to reduce the presence of the Nazgul. At least it would be more difficult to predict for the wise what Sauron was actually planning. And as we learned, when clad in their robes, the ringwraiths are less terrifying. You see how much effort Sauron needed to distract from his plans, and they might have still been guessed by his enemies. That maybe explains why also Gandalf did not expect the Dark Lord to send his most powerful servants, who have the weakness that they can't ride through Middle-earth without their chief enemies noticing, even when invisible. I often get the question why the Nazgul do not simply assassinate people while invisible, because their terrifying presence will always give them away. What now happened with the Black Riders, what makes Rivendell a special place, and what Gandalf and Frodo discuss further, we will explore in the next few episodes. Thank you for watching. I try to release videos more frequently again in the future, but want to make them a bit shorter if possible. I usually aim for 15 minutes. The last few got much longer. So far, despite my lack on content, my channel did really well in August and even most of September, so thank you a lot for all the support and the nice comments. Speaking of which, if you liked this video, feel free to press the like button, leave a comment, maybe check my other videos, I link some playlists in the description, and recommend me further. In case you want to subscribe, consider pressing the annoying bell. I'm also pretty close to 30,000 subscribers, which I never expected to reach when I started. Thanks for that. If you want, you can check my Discord server or my stream on twitch.tv. When this video airs, I should be done with the Resident Evil 2 remake and we start a new game, so maybe check it out. What the next videos will be, I have not fully decided yet, but expect a gaming related one and also more Tolkien related lore content, of course. If you watch this at the 22nd of September, happy Hobbit Day. Again, thank you for watching and goodbye.